Welcome, Hardies and Hardos. I'm going to introduce this show this week because Button's
We're
just
live?
paying attention over there.
My bad.
Yeah. What are you doing instead? Just what's more important, buddy, than the fantasy podcast?
Well, checking my brutal fantasy teams. One of them is,
You're just preparing for the roast.
yes, pretty much. One of my teams is
Yeah.
0-8, so that's how
That's
rough
fun
it's
for
been
you, isn't it?
this year. 0-8,
Yeah.
but in my defense, Saquon, Mixon, Waddle, Hollywood Brown, Gabe Davis, Devontae Smith, that's my core. I haven't gotten one win with that core. I
Tough.
feel like that core is good enough for one win, right? Like, come on.
Nope, not for you.
Ah,
Not for Rats. Rats don't get one win out of that squad, so
wow. Nice.
stuff.
Nice. Well, I have been killing it on this podcast, my over-unders, I must say,
True.
which we're going to do that right to start this episode. Spinny, why don't you start us off with one of your unders this week for week 9?
Unders is a surprising one given that projection is so low, but that is Drake London. Drake London is projected. I'm going to do standard. Sorry, we didn't introduce this, but I'm going to do standard rankings plus we'll do PPR. So we'll get both sides of the coin there, and you can make your picks based on that. But anyways, 6 points in standard is what Drake London is projected. You're thinking, wow, he's going on an under with 6 points, but he hasn't scored over 6 points since week 3. He's obviously been hurt some of that time, but he doesn't have an over 6 point performance in standard since week 3. So the Falcons offense has been they've been getting Pitts a touch more involved, but it just seems like London isn't getting the percentage of snap play that he had in the past. So we're just gonna go risky and go over. We're gonna go under 6 for Drake London.
That, honestly, it's been disappointing. London and Pitts, they're just not involving him, or them, I should say, like they should be. And it blows my mind because they're both obviously very talented players. So I don't really get that.
And we know Marcus Mariota has limits, right? But it's like he hasn't had over 5 targets. And in weeks 5 and 6, he only played on 65% of the snaps. So it's like a couple weeks there not playing on tons of snaps. And then the last 2 weeks, just no production and not a huge target share either, which given his 7, 12, 6, 7, 7 target share to start the season to go to where we are now is kind of surprising.
Yeah. And not to mention Mariota is currently QB8. So
yeah.
Top 10 quarterback, but his two biggest weapons aren't really even relevant.
Yeah, I mean, part of that obviously is the rushing that Mariota has.
Right.
Scoring, but yeah.
For sure. My first under is, I feel like, an obvious one. It's Michael Carter, projected 10.02 against the Bills. Bills are the best rush defense so far against opposing running backs in terms of fantasy points. So that obviously doesn't bode well for Carter there. And he scored under 10 points, under his current projection, in 6 of his 8 games so far. And then obviously he's splitting carries with Robinson. That's another factor. So yeah, I just really don't see Mike Carter being able to score 10 points against this great Bills rush defense.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I think the Bills are probably going to light the Jets up, honestly, too. So
yeah, definitely.
That is part of it. So I should go with my next under, which is Darren Waller. And Darren Waller's standard projection is 7.77. As far as Yahoo Sports is concerned, he has not scored that since week 2. He's also going into this week with a hamstring injury. So,
right. Did
even if he plays, he didn't play last week.
Okay.
And he hasn't played since he got this injury in week 5. So he played like the first half of the first quarter against Kansas City. And then he hasn't played since then. They had their bye. He missed the Houston game and the New Orleans game. Or New Orleans is this week, sorry. So he missed the Houston game. He has not scored that 7.77 number since week 2. He has been only playing in 80% of the snaps at the peak. He has 2 games, one in the 70s and one in the 50s, even to start the season. So it's just been interesting game plan wise. They haven't got Waller involved as much as we would have liked to see, and I just don't trust them, especially against the New Orleans defense.
Yeah, that's fair. That is fair points. My second under here is going to surprise some of you. I know Spinny's not going to like this. I mean, hell, I don't even really like this take because I got him on one of my very few good teams, and that's Tyreek Hill. He's projected 18.61 in half PPR here. They play at the Bears, who, in terms of fantasy, is actually the fourth best versus wide receivers. And Tyreek Hill, yeah, I mean, he's WR1 or 2, depending on your format here so far throughout the entire league. But he has actually gone under this projection in half his games, 4 of the 8 games. And he has a trend this year. It's every other game, essentially. So one game he's bad. I mean, not up to normal Tyreek standards, I should say. Not necessarily bad. Still scoring like 10 or so points. And then the other weeks, he's scoring like 25 plus. And that's how it's been literally every single other game so far this year. And if that trend were to continue, that means he's going under again this week. So it's kind of a risky under, obviously, given how good he is. And he could just pop off for a 70-yard touchdown at any moment and almost get the 18 points right there. But I think if he follows that trend and against a good defense, he could go under this week.
I like that. I like that a lot. So now we should move on to overs, eh? Is that the end? You got another under
Yes,
for
sir.
me?
I do not.
Okay. Overs is a guy I do not like to pick, but I will take Green Bay Packers this week, and that's Allen Lazard, 8.34
Really?
points. He scored at least that 3 out of the last 5 weeks, and that's even with a little injury stuff going on in there. He sat out last week, but he practiced Wednesday this week. So usually when you practice Wednesday, that's a really good sign, especially if we get a follow-up. I haven't checked today yet. But if we get a follow-up practice today and tomorrow, then, you're looking like a good go for Allen Lazard. So I think the Packers are going to have something to prove finally. I mean, they've lost, how many games in a row. So I think Lazard is Rodgers' most trusted target when he plays.
Yeah, Lazard has had a safe floor for sure so far this season, and 8 points. He could definitely get that. That's 1 touchdown. So I could definitely picture him going over this week. My first over is also receiver Tyler Boyd, 11.49 half PPR against the Panthers, who are the seventh worst team versus wide receivers. Obviously, Jamar Chase is hurt, so he's up to WR2 on his team, so that helps. I think the Bengals are going to bounce back from that hideous performance on Monday Night Football against the Browns and come ready to play in this game. WR15 currently, so he's a WR2 heading into this week, and he's gone over on this projection in half his games, including the last 2, which obviously last week was his first week without Jamar Chase. So he even went over last week without Jamar Chase in that hideous game. So I have confidence against a terrible defense this week in Tyler Boyd.
I like that one. I think I contemplated picking Higgins for this too.
Yeah.
He's one of my honorable mention guys when it came to this. But my last over is Miles Sanders. He is projected 11.24 points, kind of a lot in standard to be going over on, but 3 out of the last 4 weeks he has hit that, and they're about to play right now against Houston, but I think that Philly's going to run that game, get up by a lot. There's going to be lots of rushing going on. Sanders does not still play a huge percentage of the snaps. Last week, 55. Before their bye, 62. His high is 74% of the snaps this year, but he has been effective. He has.
You also have to consider, though, a lot of those games were in blowouts. So especially last week, he didn't even play the entire fourth quarter. The starters were benched. So that obviously plays into a snap count.
Yeah, but 5 touchdowns so far this year. Yeah, last week he had 8.67 yards per carry. So he's definitely been exceedingly effective. He has had multiple four of the 7 games they played this year. He has been over 4.7 yards per carry. So super effective for Sanders.
That's very good.
I think against Houston, again, it's going to be a lot of running. Hopefully it's not as a crazy blowout. Like it's like close-ish, like 14. Can we keep it just at 14 to keep him involved? But we'll see what happens. But I think he's going to be effective, and I think a touchdown is very likely.
Yeah, I agree. I like that one. My second over is also a running back, just like Spinny, and that's Ramondre Stevenson. Wow, we were talking a couple weeks ago how we might never talk about Ramondre again. We're, kind of giving up on him, and wow, has he really taken over this backfield? He has been an absolute monster these last couple weeks. It's projected 12.29 against the Colts, which is the eighth worst rush defense. He's been the clear lead back. He's handled the majority of the snaps, aka plus 50% of snaps in literally every single game. And his last four games, 18.5, 23, 19.8, and 17.8 fantasy points. So he's been absolutely killing it. Like I said, he's involved in the pass game. That's a huge part of it. He has at least 5 targets and 4 catches in 5 of the last 6 games. So he's getting the most carries, and he's getting 4 catches a game. That's incredible, especially in your half PPR format. So against a terrible offense or defense, I should say, in the Colts, at least rush defense, Ramondre should definitely go over this week.
Yeah, I like that one. I'm obviously a little scared because Bill loves changing it up. So like when Harris comes back and there's a lot of options, we'll
He's
see.
been back. He's played these last 2 weeks.
Has he?
Yeah.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
I take back my. I didn't think.
And even in the beginning
how
of the
much I pay
season,
attention. Jeez.
yeah, no, because you wouldn't even notice because it was literally
No, it
Ramondre
was all
playing the whole game.
Ramondre.
Yeah,
And I just watched those games mostly on Red Zone, and I never saw
right.
Damian Harris at all. So
Yeah, no, he seems to be getting almost phased out.
yeah,
He's getting his like 8 to 10 carries, but that's about it. It's the only snaps he's playing. So,
facts.
you just got to go with the hot hand at times, and Ramondre definitely has it. Well, we'll go to our next segment now, and we're actually going to talk trade deadline. There's a number of deals that will have fantasy impact for this season and even next year going forward. We got to start with the good one, ours, right? TJ Hawkinson, a 4th-round pick in 2023 and a conditional 4th-rounder in 2024 for a 2023 second and a 2024 third. I love this deal for the Vikings. Fantasy-wise, though, I think the only ones really affected here are basically Thielen. KJ was never really playable anyways. Thielen could take a hit on him, honestly. I anticipate Hawkinson being really involved. Think about all the pass attempts there have been to tight ends already in this offense, not to mention all the drops. Irvin, God, what's the other dude's name?
Uh,
I can't remember, but they've had wide open catches just dropped. There's gonna be plenty of volume heading Hawkinson's way. I'll talk a little more about him later on, but I love this deal for the Vikings.
yeah, Kirk loves throwing a tight ends. So we've seen that. Rudolph was his boy in the red zone along with Thielen. So I think that will be a thing with TJ Hawkinson that'll continue and could bring him some fantasy value. But we'll see. You don't want to trust it for a couple weeks until you see what's up with it. But he's obviously still currently tight end 4. So you might as well. In standard, he's tight end 4. So you might as well just start him. I guess at this point, obviously.
Yeah. The second trade, Claypool to the Bears for a 2023 second. This is a little too much for me, in my opinion. But fantasy-wise, this is obviously a solid move for the Bears. They need more skill players, but I don't know if there's really much relevance for this season. That passing attack has been terrible this year. I don't know if this really changes that much, but at least the Bears are trying to field some weapons.
True. Yeah, I think it's a bad trade for the Bears. Like I get the attempt, but like the upside on a receiver you're going to get in the second round seems higher than Chase Claypool's, but that's just me.
Not to mention they just traded like their best defensive players too. So it's like, oh, they're rebuilding, but then they actually trade a second round pick for a receiver that's not even that good. But
yeah,
whatever. I get it though. Next trade, Ridley to the Jags for a weird package, a lot of conditions in it. At best, ends up being a 2023 fifth and a 2024 second. This is obviously a good move for the Jazz. They need another receiver, given that Christian Kirk's essentially their only good one. This obviously has no impact for this season, but in your dynasty formats, I kind of like the Ridley on the Jags. I like how this is looking going forward, and especially if you have Trevor Lawrence. He got another weapon, so hopefully in fantasy next year, if you have him in your dynasty league, he does even better, takes another step forward.
Yeah, I agree. Obviously, that's a dynasty only impact, but yeah, I mean, I think if Lawrence ends up at all anywhere near what we hope he is, I think Christian Kirk can be a two. I think that's a pretty good two, and if Ridley can go back to close to where he was, it's definitely a guy you want.
Next trade, more focused on the Edmonds aspect here, but Bradley Chubb stud got traded to the Dolphins for a first round pick this year, a 2024 fourth, and Chase Edmonds. Is Edmonds going to have any value in Denver? I don't think so.
I hope so, but I don't know. Edmonds obviously balled out in Arizona last year,
right?
Or 2 years? Was that 2 years ago?
Last year,
yeah. And he, even with Connor's touchdowns, he still had a decent fantasy production last year. So maybe Russ dumps it off a lot. I don't know what they think of their running back core there, but obviously you're getting the by committee with Murray or Gordon or him. Like, you know that's how that's going. So,
and a corresponding move, the Dolphins traded a 5th round pick this year for Jeff Wilson. So I still picture Mostert being the lead back here. Wilson, more of a handcuff value, I think, for this year. So if he got dropped in any leagues after the CMC addition, that's maybe taking worth a look, especially given Mostert's career history of injuries.
Yeah,
but he's been healthy this year.
Tomorrow, and Jeff Wilson's an RB too. So
right, but he has been healthy this year. So, but yeah, good handcuff value there. Next one, I think, is another handcuff situation again, and that's Nyheim Hines to the Bills for Zach Moss and a 6th round pick. I don't anticipate Zach Moss. He already had no value. Don't think he'll have any value on the Colts. Nyheim Hines, I think, maybe some PPR value, but given Singletary and involvement of rookie James Cook, Bills' backfield has never been something to trust.
Nyheim Hines and Devin Singletary are the same running back.
Yeah.
So it's like, seriously. What? Like, okay, so you're just giving yourself more options for one of them playing good? I guess. Sad. But.
I guess. Also helps that Josh Allen is essentially a running back too. So
yeah,
with all the touchdowns he gets. Well, that was actually our last trade. Not a ton of super exciting fantasy impact here for these trades, but Hawkinson, that one's my favorite, obviously. I'm excited for the Vikings.
I'm excited they made a deadline move, actually.
Right. We actually are trying to get better and go for it. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, our last segment here is second half position rankings. We might be doing this a week early, given some teams are only playing their 8th game this week. Who cares? We're doing it now. Second half position rankings. Spinny, you're going to be doing standard, correct?
Yeah.
And I will be doing half PPR/PPR. So take those how you want it. Let's just start with the tight end. I feel like this is the most straight up one to me, at least obviously the top 2.
I think it could be different. I'm interested to see what it is. I didn't look it up in PPR because it might be quite a bit different.
So PPR right now, Kelsey's first by 23 points. Then Andrews, he's up by another 23 points on 3rd. And then it's Ertz, Taysom Hill, TJ Hawkinson. That rounds out the top 5. I will switch mine a little bit. Kelsey and Andrews still 1 and 2 for me heading in the second half here. I got Hawkinson as 3. I really do, especially like you said earlier, Spinny, the red zone threat. Like, obviously, Kirk targeted Rudolph a lot. So if he could even be like half the red zone threat that Rudolph was, that should definitely increase his value, especially going from Goff to, the shitty Lions to the Vikings, who are actually good. 4, I have Goddard. I think he was tight end 6, so just outside of the 5 currently. But given how good the Eagles are, he's constantly involved. Great weekly floor for Goddard. I think he'll be a top 5 tight end in the second half. And then 5th, I'm still going Ertz. Hollywood Brown's out. So he's basically the second option behind Hopkins. So I got to go Ertz at 5.
Yeah, I like that. The reason I ask is the standard rankings went Kelsey, Andrews, Taysom Hill, T.J. Hawkinson, Zach Ertz. And honestly, that is exactly what I think the second half will be. I love Taysom Hill's touchdown value in standard. Like I just love his value at the tight end position, the big playability you get off of him. I think Hawkinson will be effective still with Kirk, probably get more touchdown attempts, but also probably less targets overall. So like we're balancing it out there. And yeah, Ertz is good, and this quarterback loves throwing to him. So
Yeah, I could see that. It was tough for me to leave Taysom out, just given how much involvement he gets in the rush game. So he was definitely an honorable mention for me. Let's move on to the other pass catchers, aka wide receivers. Right now, as it stands, Diggs 1, Tyreek 2 by only 0.8 points. Cooper Kupp, Waddle is 4, 2 Dolphins in the top 5. That's incredible. And Jefferson is 5. My second half rankings, I'm switching up a little bit. I'm going Tyreek 1. I know this might be a surprise for PPR, given how involved Diggs is and how many catches he gets. But Tyreek is just, he's proven already this year how stinking good he is. A lot of people always thought his value was tied to Mahomes, but Mike McDaniel's been doing a great job of getting him the ball in a variety of different situations. And I mean, Tua's been playing really well as well, and he's proven to hit the deep ball at times too. And I mean, Tyreek's just a guy, you get the ball at line of scrimmage, he could bust off 50 yards any given play. So I like the big play potential there. And, you know, the Bills could run into a lot of blowouts too in the second half of the season, which, you know, that doesn't bode well for Diggs being on the field and scoring a lot of fantasy points. So it's close. It's very close. I'm obviously sticking with Diggs at 2. Jefferson, I'm bumping up to 3. I think he has a better second half here. Obviously, still incredible first half, though. Kupp, 4. I considered dropping him out of my top 5, but given his PPR value, I just had to keep him in there. And I'm actually dropping Waddle out of my top 5. I'm sticking A.J. Brown, who's currently WR7. I just don't know if 2 receivers on the same team will end up being top 5 in fantasy, but I could completely see it. Waddle and Devontae Adams are the other 2 that I could picture being top 5 receivers in the second half.
yeah, I like that. The standard rankings go Diggs, Hill, Kupp, Waddle, and Justin Jefferson. So I think that's pretty close. I have Hill 1 instead of Diggs as well. I just think touchdown value. Diggs is obviously getting that huge target, but just I don't know. I love how Miami uses Hill, and it's just he busts so many plays. I also have him in league, so I'm a little biased. Shout out to anyone in my hometown league because I have the Waddle and Hill combo in standard, and I am loving my life for that. Got made fun of for that at the draft, but we panned out for us. Honestly, it was a bold strategy, really, but it worked out.
Insane combo.
Yes, my top. Yeah, so I go Hill, Diggs, Jefferson, Waddle, and I also have AJ Brown at 5. I left Cooper Kupp out. I think there's a little bit of an injury situation going on right now. Not sure where that's at. And the Rams' offense is terrible. Like, obviously, he's going to get his targets. He's going to get 10 catches and 100 yards all the time because, like, he's the only one getting open. But, like, the touchdown factor with other receivers and other offenses, especially in standard, is a big value.
I mean, you just saw it this past week, 3 touchdowns, AJ Brown. I mean, they don't call him the show for nothing. The dude is a monster.
Yep.
On to running backs now. Half PPR/PPR rankings are Chubb, Eckler, CMC, Saquon, and Henry. I'm switching up a little bit. I actually got Chubb going all the way down to 3. I'm going Eckler 1, CMC 2, Chubb 3, Henry 4, Saquon 5. Henry's obviously been killing it. Oh, what's your reaction here?
Austin Eckler,
I think will have the best
fantasy running back in the second half.
Yep, he was only 10 points behind Nick Chubb in PPR so far. I still trust Justin Herbert more than Jacoby Brissett offense. So obviously Chubb is going to keep eating. I have him as 3rd. It's not like I dropped him on my top 5. He's going to keep eating, no doubt about it. but the amount of catches Eckler gets is ridiculous. This man's getting like 10 catches every single game, especially when Keenan Allen can't freaking play ever, and Mike Williams is also out for weeks too. So they're really leaning on Eckler for more receiving value too. So I love Eckler's fantasy outlook. CMC, obviously, I mean, we see what he can do on the shitty Panthers, and now he's on a good team. So that obviously boosts his value. Chubb will keep eating, like I said. Henry, I think his more recent games it's showing what he actually is, and he's back to himself again. So I think Henry will pass Saquon, and that rounds out my top 5.
Henry just needed a couple weeks to get back to it.
Exactly.
Eckler at 1 is mind blowing to me. I get the argument,
but he's 2 right now. So like, why is it that mind blowing?
Just I don't know. It's Austin Eckler.
He was number 1 last year.
I don't even have him in my top 5 in my standard ranking. So
Sanders a little different because he's not scoring touchdowns, but he's scoring 30 fantasy points a game right now. I think 3 straight games. Actually, I don't know.
Catches.
Yeah. So he has 10 catches for 80 yards or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Standard fantasy rankings now for running backs go Chubb, Henry, Saquon, CMC, and Eckler. My rankings going forward is CMC 1. I think his boosted touchdown value in San Francisco is huge in standard. And like we just saw it last week, 3
passing,
touchdowns.
rushing, receiving.
Yeah, like he's going to be so involved. Chubb 2, Henry 3. Both those guys, huge parts of their offense, huge in the red zone. Derrick Henry, obviously, is an absolute beast. Saquon 4. Again, I don't trust the Giants offense quite as much as 2 and 3 there, but we'll see what happens. Saquon's been amazing, and they give him the ball as much as he wants it. So he could break my list there. That was the biggest worry for me, is I think Saquon could make a big step up. I just don't trust the Giants, and I don't trust Daniel Jones. So all right, and my 5 is Josh Jacobs. I think Josh Jacobs has gotten the ball a ton, especially in the running game, ton of red zone looks. And I think the Raiders are going to keep getting better. They had a crappy loss to New Orleans last week. They've had some ups and downs this year, but I think they might make a little late push just to get the playoffs low key. So I'm going to go with Josh Jacobs at 5.
Yeah, I mean, he's currently 6th right now, at least in PPR.
He's 6th in standard as well.
Yeah, he was an honorable mention for me as well. He could definitely slide in that top 5. Now on to quarterbacks. This one's been crazy because just right now, before we give our top 5s here, 7 through 10 currently is Geno Smith, Marcus Mariota, Daniel Jones, and Trevor Lawrence. That is the back end QB1s right now. That means Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Justin Herbert, some more fringe guys, Kirk Cousins, Russell Wilson, Tua. None of those guys are QB1s right now as we speak. That's just crazy to think about.
Yeah, that is so crazy. And along with that, I really only think there's like 6 guys that can really be considered for this. I have a dark horse, but really, like if I was betting money, I think 6 guys is really all you get.
Yeah, I agree. I have it at 6 as well. So I'll just start. Josh Allen is currently 1, Burrow 2, Lamar 3, Hurts 4, Mahomes 5. Kyler is 6th. So that is the other guy that I was considering. I don't know about you. That's what I was considering.
Yeah.
Josh Allen is 1. I don't think that changes. I'm leaving him at 1. I'm going Mahomes 2. I expect a better fantasy score for him the second half of the season. I mean, it's Pat Mahomes. I mean, Josh Allen and Mahomes, clearly the best 2 quarterbacks in the league. So, if I'm putting money on it, I'm going with Mahomes. Hurts, I'm going with as 3. I think the Eagles are just better than the Ravens. So I don't know. I just had to go with Hurts over Lamar there, which means Lamar is 4 for me, and Burrow is 5. So he's dropping a little bit, obviously just given the loss of Jamar Chase for these couple games here. But he has actually a favorable schedule. He has the Panthers this week, and then he has the Steelers. He has a Panthers by Steelers. So there's potential for Chase to return after that Steelers game. So he might not even face another really good defense without Jamar Chase. So I still have Burrow in my top 5.
Yeah, obviously QB rankings don't change, so it's the same rankings for me. My list goes Allen, Lamar, Hurts, Mahomes, Burrow. I think the top 5 is the same. I think Kyler stays at 6. I just love Lamar and Hurts rushing production. I think Burrow is going to get more rushing production on his own team, hopefully, out of Joe Mixon, so that he doesn't have to throw it 7,500 million times. So hopefully we'll see that, and that'll cause a little down in fantasy value. And and I think I just like the running of Lamar and Hurts over Mahomes. And I think Kansas City's running a more balanced offense this year as well.
That they are. That is facts. Well, that's all we got for y'all this week. Drop comments what you guys think. Again, any topics you want to hear about, for sure, drop comments. Not with this paper flipping thing again.
Just closing the book.
Oh my gosh.
Closing the book on the episode.
Before we started recording, this guy was flipping his notes for like 10 minutes straight. All I heard was one page at a time. I was like, oh my gosh.
Had to find it, Finding my notes and annoying you at the same time. Perfect. Exactly what I like.
Classic Spinny. What's now? All right, so we appreciate you listening.
Love you.
Catch y'all next week.